As I walked down the aisle, the chapel lights caught the edges of my veil, casting soft reflections across the rows of polished chairs. Everyone was watching me, smiling, whispering, holding their breath for the moment. I looked straight ahead, focused on Callum, standing at the altar with his practiced grin. My heart didn't race. It beat steadily, as if it already knew what was coming. Just as I passed the third row, I heard his father, Douglas Reed, mutter under his breath, "I give this marriage 6 months." One of his friends chuckled and leaned over to whisper loudly enough for me to catch it. "She deserves better." I smiled, not a fake, nervous smile, but a knowing one. Because what none of them realized was that I had already made peace with the truth. I didn't come to this wedding to get married. I came to end it. I glanced at my mother, May, sitting quietly in the front pew. Her expression was unreadable, but she gave me the smallest nod, the kind of look only a mother can give, half heartbreak, half pride. I stepped onto the platform. Callum reached out his hand, trying to look calm. His hazel eyes flicked over my face, as if checking whether something was off. Then the officiant cleared his throat. "Before we begin," he said, "there's a video the bride wanted to play." Every head turned. The room fell silent. The screen behind us lit up, and I watched as every person who once doubted me saw the truth with their own eyes. My name is Nora Delaney. I'm 29 years old, and until about a month ago, I thought I was marrying the man of my dreams. I work as a creative director for a publishing house in Chicago. I love rainy mornings, fresh coffee, quiet bookstores, and the feeling of being understood. For a long time, I believed Callum Reed understood me. We met at an author's Q&A event in the city. I was there to support one of our up-and-coming writers. He was there, as he said, to hear something real. We ended up at the same table during the post-event reception. I noticed his confidence first, then his voice, deep, calm, full of attention. He asked questions not just about work, but about the way I saw the world. I had been in enough shallow relationships to feel startled when someone actually listened. He asked for my number. I said yes. That night, I told my mother, May, about him. I remember the way she looked at me across the dinner table. She smiled, but there was a flicker of caution in her eyes. My mom has always been my anchor. She raised my younger brother Miles and me after my dad died of a heart attack when I was 19. She doesn't give her trust easily, especially not to men who walk in with polished smiles. Callum texted me the next morning. Then, the morning after that. Within 2 weeks, we were going on weekend hikes and talking about childhood stories. He told me he admired the way I handled loss. He said I had a strength that made him feel safe. I didn't realize then that he was mirroring my language back at me. It felt like falling in love, but it was really just falling into a version of myself he wanted to use. His family was well off, old money from Connecticut, but he had made his own way, or so he claimed. His father, Douglas Reed, ran a law firm and walked around like every room owed him respect. His mother was polite in that empty, performative way people are when they've decided you're not good enough, but want to appear gracious. I tried. I smiled. I dressed carefully. I laughed at their jokes and answered their thinly veiled questions about my background with grace. And through all of that, Callum held my hand and told me none of it mattered. Sienna Cross was my cousin on my mother's side, but we grew up like sisters. She lived 3 houses down, and our childhoods were filled with sleepovers, secret codes, and birthday parties with matching cakes. She was the kind of person who could light up a room with a laugh and make anyone feel like her best friend. We stayed close through college. She became a kindergarten teacher, and I was her sounding board for every awkward crush, every failed date, every small heartbreak. When I got engaged, she cried. Real tears. She hugged me so tightly I almost dropped the ring box. Of course, I asked her to be my maid of honor. There was no one else it could have been. Planning the wedding was both exciting and exhausting. We chose a small, modern chapel with arched windows and soft wood accents. I wanted it to feel like a love story, not a performance. Sienna was there for every fitting, every tasting, every decision about flower arrangements. She teased me about my indecision over linen colors and calmed me down when I had a meltdown over the seating chart. She was the one I vented to the night before the bridal shower when Callum bailed at the last minute on helping with setup. She told me, "Men get cold feet about the small stuff, but never doubt the big love." I believed her. May, as always, had been quiet but observant through everything. She helped where she could, but never pushed. A few nights before the wedding, I sat on the porch with her while Miles played guitar in the background. She poured me a cup of tea and said, "You sure, baby?" I laughed. "You don't like him." She shrugged. "I don't know him well enough to say, but I know you. And I've seen you more at peace than you are right now." I told her I was just tired, that weddings are stressful, that it was normal to feel overwhelmed. I think part of me knew I was lying, not to her, but to myself. Still, I smiled and kissed her cheek. I told her Dad would have liked Callum. She didn't say anything back. In those final days leading up to the ceremony, there were moments when I felt something shift. Not big things, little silences. A text Callum wouldn't explain. A glance Sienna quickly hid. But I brushed them off. I had invested so much. I told myself not to get paranoid. I was marrying a man who loved me. I was walking toward the next chapter. What I didn't know was that they had already written their own. It started with a moment I almost missed. I was curled up on the couch with my laptop, going through the wedding playlist. Callum had said he'd help finalize the song order, but when I called to ask what he thought of our first dance choices, he didn't answer. I waited a while, then texted. No response. 3 hours later, he called back and said he had fallen asleep at his office. He sounded tired, annoyed that I was checking in. I apologized and let it go. But something about his tone stuck with me. The next morning, I asked him if he was okay. He gave me a quick smile and said, "You're just nervous, Nora. Everyone gets like this before the wedding." I wanted to believe that. I wanted to believe him. A few days later, I met up with one of my bridesmaids, Gia, for coffee. She had just flown in from New York and was excited to catch up. We talked about dresses, shoes, and her chaotic travel schedule. As she scrolled through her phone, looking for a picture of a reception layout she thought I'd like, she paused. "Oh, weird," she said casually. "I saw Callum at Cafe Rowan last weekend. He didn't see me, I guess." I looked up. "Oh? With who?" She scrolled again, distracted. "I don't know, some blonde. I figured maybe a coworker or a family member." I didn't want to interrupt. He looked deep in conversation. I smiled and nodded, but my hands clenched around my coffee cup. Sienna was blonde. I didn't ask Gia more questions. I didn't want to seem suspicious. But that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept picturing his face when I had asked where he'd been that weekend. He had said he was visiting his brother in Lakeview. No mention of Cafe Rowan. I told myself I was overthinking. Stress does that. You start seeing shadows where there aren't any. But it didn't stop there. Sienna started acting different. She was still involved, still smiling, still helping with the wedding prep, but something about her energy shifted. She avoided eye contact when Callum was around. She kept her phone face down. Once, I walked into my own guest room where she was staying and saw her quickly closing her laptop. She said she was writing thank you cards. I nodded. I didn't believe her. 3 nights before the wedding, I was alone in our apartment trying to download a slideshow of photos for the reception screen. I needed a few from Callum's phone, and since we had synced our iCloud folders months ago, I logged into the shared folder to check for recent uploads. There was a new file, no label, just a timestamp from 10 days ago. I clicked on it. At first, the footage looked like nothing. It was security camera footage from inside our apartment. something we had installed more for peace of mind when we traveled than for actual use. Then I saw movement. Callum walked in laughing. A few seconds later, Sienna followed him through the door. She was wearing the blue sweater I had given her last Christmas. They didn't say anything right away. Then he turned, pulled her close, and kissed her. My hands froze. I couldn't blink. I couldn't breathe. They kissed again and again. He took off his coat. She kicked off her shoes the way she had 100 times in our house growing up. It looked normal, comfortable, like they had done this before. I shut the laptop for a moment and sat still, waiting to wake up. But I didn't. This was real. Something sharp rose in my chest, like I had swallowed glass. It wasn't just betrayal. It was humiliation, heartbreak, grief, and rage all wrapped into one searing physical ache. I called May. She answered immediately. I didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then I said, "He cheated on me." There was silence on the other end, then a slow, controlled exhale. "With who?" she asked. "C." She didn't curse. She didn't cry. She just said, "I'm coming over." 15 minutes later, she was sitting next to me on the couch, holding my hand. I played the video again. She watched the whole thing without looking away. "What are you going to do?" she asked softly. "I'm going to show them," I said. "Before the ceremony?" she asked. "No," I said. "At the ceremony." She didn't argue. The next morning, I called my brother Miles. He had always been good with tech. I told him what happened. I showed him the footage. He didn't say much, just clenched his jaw and nodded. "I'll set it up," he said. "They'll see everything." In the days that followed, I acted like nothing was wrong. I showed up to the final rehearsal. I sent out last-minute confirmations. I took pictures with Sienna as she helped me prep centerpieces. She smiled and posed like everything was perfect. And I smiled back, because now I knew exactly what I was walking into. And so did my mother. Once the decision was made, I didn't cry again. There was no breakdown, no storm of screaming or smashed picture frames, just a cold, sobering clarity that settled into my chest. The kind of clarity that comes when something breaks along such a clean line that you can see straight through the wreckage. I wasn't going to cancel the wedding. I wasn't going to run. I wasn't going to ask Callum for an explanation or confront Sienna through tears. I had done nothing wrong. I had loved, trusted, and stayed loyal. That was more than they could say. If they had the audacity to betray me behind my back, I would show the world the truth to their faces. May didn't ask questions. Once I told her I wanted to go through with the wedding day, she gave me a long look, her eyes heavy with sadness and pride. "If this is what you want," she said, "I'll be with you every step." That afternoon, I sat down with Miles and walked him through the plan. We were in his small apartment, surrounded by wires, monitors, and the quiet hum of computer fans. He looked over the footage again, cutting the video cleanly, making sure the timestamp was visible and the audio crisp. His jaw stayed tight the entire time. I had never seen him that angry. "You want this to play at the altar?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Right before the vows. No warning, no build-up, just the truth." Miles nodded. "We'll put it on a delay. I'll load it onto a USB with auto launch. The venue staff won't even notice until it starts." I looked at him. "Thank you." He didn't respond. He just pulled me into a hug, tighter than he ever had before, and said, "You don't deserve this, and he doesn't deserve you." We kept everything quiet. No one outside our family knew. Not Gia, not my aunt, not the wedding coordinator. Sienna continued texting me updates and selfies from the bridal suite. Captions like, "So happy for you, you're glowing, babe." She sent me a photo of my wedding shoes lined up next to hers. In the message she wrote, "Two queens getting married to their soulmates." I looked at the photo and felt nothing. The night before the wedding, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling fan as it spun above me. I thought about the little girl who used to dream about her wedding day, the one who wanted to wear her mother's necklace, walk down the aisle to piano music, and marry someone who would look at her like she was the only person in the world. I mourned her. In the morning, I rose early. I ate a light breakfast, helped May load the car, and headed to the chapel. The bridal suite was warm and bright, filled with soft music and champagne. My makeup artist chatted about trends while curling my hair. Sienna walked in an hour later, laughing about how the groom's party was already sneaking drinks. She handed me a small velvet box. "A little something for luck," she said. Inside was a silver bracelet. It was delicate and beautiful. I smiled at her. She looked so proud of herself. "You're amazing," I said, and placed it carefully in my clutch. Gia walked in a few minutes later with coffee and broke the tension with her usual energy. I let them fuss over my dress, talk about photo poses, and debate how long I should make Callum wait at the altar. I let the whole performance unfold, like a play whose ending I already knew. In the hallway, May took my hand as I adjusted my veil. "You don't have to do this," she said. "There's still time." "I do," I said. "I need to." She didn't argue. She just squeezed my hand and said, "Then walk tall. Walk like you're already free." As I stepped into the hallway, the ceremony music began. I saw the back of the chapel, the guests rising to their feet. I took one breath, then another, and started forward. The weight of the moment didn't crush me. It lifted me. I wasn't walking toward a life I had chosen. I was walking toward the moment I would reclaim my voice. I passed Douglas Reed as I approached the altar. He leaned over and muttered, "I give this marriage 6 months. His friend chuckled. "She deserves better." I heard every word. I registered each one, but my face never changed. I smiled, not from nerves, but from certainty. Callum stood ahead, waiting. His eyes flicked to mine. He had no idea. The officiant greeted us with a warm smile, cleared his throat, and looked out at the crowd. "Before we begin," he said, "there's a video the bride wanted to play." The room shifted. Heads turned. Then the screen behind us lit up. It flickered to life with a soft buzz. At first, no one understood what they were seeing. The camera angle was familiar to some of them, my apartment. The grainy view showed a couch, a small table, a hallway in the background. It was quiet, still, confusing. Guests glanced at one another, puzzled. Then there was movement. Callum stepped into the frame laughing, tossing his coat aside. The sound was clear. The timestamp in the top left corner read 10 days before the wedding. The silence in the chapel changed. People leaned forward. Whispers rippled through the room. A second figure entered the shot. Sienna. She was wearing the blue sweater I had given her. Her face was bright. Her laugh rang out. There was no room for doubt. Callum wrapped his arms around her waist and kissed her. Not quickly, not awkwardly, with the ease that only comes from comfort and repetition. Someone in the audience gasped. Another voice whispered, "Is that?" A third, louder, said, "Oh my God!" Callum moved first. He stepped forward, his smile gone. His hand lifted slightly, as if he might signal for the screen to stop, but he didn't speak. He didn't deny it. He just froze. Sienna let out a sharp breath and turned toward me, her face drained of color. She clutched her bouquet so tightly, her knuckles went white. For the first time since we were children, she looked like a stranger. The video continued, showing just enough. A second kiss, a few lines of casual conversation. Him saying, "You always know how to calm me down." Her replying, "You make me feel like I matter." Words I had once believed were mine alone. Then the screen went black. The chapel was silent. No music, no voices, just stunned stillness. I stepped forward and turned to face the guests, friends, extended family, colleagues, people who had flown in from different states to be there. I took one breath and spoke clearly. This was recorded in my apartment 10 days ago. That's my fiancé and my maid of honor, my cousin. Gasps filled the room. A chair scraped against the tile. Someone in the back murmured, "You've got to be kidding me." I didn't cry. My voice didn't shake. I found out 3 nights ago. I could have canceled. I could have screamed, argued, or begged for answers. But instead, I decided to show you who I would have been marrying and who I would have been calling my sister. I looked at Callum. He still hadn't spoken. His lips were pressed into a tight line. His father had risen from his seat, hands clenched at his sides, his face a mix of fury and humiliation. I turned to Sienna. She stared at the floor. Her hands trembled. Then I faced the guests again. I'm not ashamed. I'm not broken. I'm grateful. Because now I get to walk away knowing exactly who they are. And I don't have to waste another minute building a life on a lie. A few people began to clap. Not politely, genuinely. May stood up. She was crying, but she stood tall. I took one last look at the altar, at the flowers, the candles, the vows that would never be spoken. And then I stepped down. I walked slowly through the rows of people who had come expecting a wedding and were now witnessing a reckoning. Some looked stunned. Some nodded with quiet admiration. One woman mouthed the word brave as I passed. At the exit, Miles was waiting. He held the door open, silent and steady. Outside, the air was cool. The sun had shifted, casting long shadows across the chapel lawn. I exhaled fully. It felt like releasing a weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying. May came out next and wrapped her arms around me. She didn't speak at first. She just held me. I buried my face in her shoulder and let my breath catch, not because I was heartbroken, but because I was free. Inside, I knew there would be chaos. Callum trying to spin the story, Sienna retreating to the bridal suite, Douglas scrambling to salvage his family's reputation. But none of that mattered to me anymore. I hadn't come for revenge. I had come for truth, and I had delivered it. I turned to May and said, "Let's go home." She nodded. As we walked toward the car, I heard a voice behind me. It was Gia. She hurried to catch up, her eyes wide, her heels clicking against the pavement. "Nora," she said breathlessly. "Are you okay?" I smiled. I've never been more okay. She blinked, then laughed. "You're a legend. You know that, right?" I didn't feel like a legend. I felt like a woman who had just chosen herself, publicly, unapologetically. And that was enough. After the wedding, everything moved quickly. The venue shut down the reception within an hour. Some guests left in silence, stunned by what they had witnessed. Others stayed behind to check on me, leaving messages with my mother or hugging Miles by the parking lot. I didn't see Callum again that day. He didn't try to follow me. He didn't call that night. But the silence didn't bring peace. It brought confirmation. The man I had almost married didn't fight for me because he knew he was guilty. Sienna tried. She sent 3 messages the next morning, each more frantic than the last. The first was a weak apology. The second turned defensive. The third begged me to call her. I didn't respond. I blocked her number, deleted her from my contacts, and removed her from every photo album and group message. She had been family once. That bond died the moment she walked into my apartment with him. I returned the dress a week later. The boutique owner hugged me and said, "You're stronger than most brides I've ever met." I didn't feel strong yet. I just felt numb. Callum emailed me 2 weeks later. It was long, full of excuses and half-admissions. He claimed he never meant to hurt me. He said it started as a mistake, something that spiraled. He said he loved me, that he panicked, that he didn't know how to fix it. He never once said he was sorry for the betrayal, only sorry he'd been caught. I never replied. Instead, I opened my laptop and started writing, not to him, but to myself. I poured out everything I had felt from the moment I saw the video to the second I stepped away from the altar. I wrote until my fingers hurt. I wrote until I found the truth at the center of all the chaos. The truth was simple. I hadn't abandoned anything. I had rescued myself. A month later, I turned that writing into a blog post. I titled it, "The Bride Who Walked Out After Pressing Play." Within days, it went viral. Thousands of women wrote to me. Some shared their own stories of betrayal. Others simply said thank you. They thanked me for being brave, for being honest, for saying out loud what they had only whispered to themselves. One message stayed with me. It said, "You showed us that dignity doesn't have to scream. It just has to stand up." 4 months later, I quit my job at the publishing house. I started a podcast called Red Flags in White Dresses, focused on emotional clarity, relationship warning signs, and self-worth. The first episode was my story. After that, I interviewed women from all walks of life who had faced betrayal, heartbreak, and the decision to stay or walk away. The podcast grew fast. It reached people in places I never expected. I received letters from high school girls, grandmothers, even men who admitted they had been both the betrayed and the betrayers. The more stories I heard, the more I realized how common this pain was and how silent so many of us had been about it. People ask me sometimes if I regret how I did it, if I regret playing the video, if I regret exposing something so private in front of friends, family, and strangers. My answer is always the same. I don't regret the truth. I didn't set out to shame anyone. I set out to reveal the reality of who I was about to commit my life to. If I had let that moment pass, if I had married him anyway, I would have betrayed myself. And that would have been the real tragedy. What happened on that wedding day wasn't the end of my life. It was the beginning of something better. I didn't walk away with bitterness. I walked away with clarity. I didn't burn down the chapel. I walked out and built something new from the ground up. I'm not ashamed to say that I loved deeply, that I trusted fully, that I believed in people who let me down. That isn't weakness. That's being human. And choosing myself when everything inside me wanted to collapse, that's strength. Today, I still wear the silver bracelet Sienna gave me that morning. Not because I want to remember her, but because I want to remember who I was when I took it off and walked away from her and from Callum. It reminds me of the day I honored myself above everything else. I didn't get the wedding I imagined, but I got something better. I got the truth. I got my freedom. And I got to say I do to the only person who had never lied to me, myself. If you're still watching, thank you for being here. This wasn't just my story. It's a story so many people quietly carry. And if you've ever been lied to, betrayed, or made to feel like you weren't enough, I hope this reminded you that walking away is not weakness. It's power. I didn't tell this story for revenge. I told it because healing begins the moment we stop hiding our pain and start owning our worth. If this video spoke to you, please like it, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a comment below telling me what part hit you the hardest or what truth you've had to face. And if you're ready for more stories about heartbreak, healing, and rising stronger, subscribe to the channel and join this community. We're not perfect, but we're honest. And that's where real strength begins. Thank you for watching. I chose myself, and I hope you do too.